Who among you has never been ganked in the world of Elite Dangerous? Please raise your hand in the comments below. I, for one, can certainly not raise my hand, as I've been ganked plenty, and through the process have learned a thing or two about how the whole thing works. Now, in ganking being the destruction of commanders that don't intend to fight you, and chances are might actually not even have the means to actively fight back or defend themselves, one of the key things is to prevent your target, or at least try to prevent your target, from running away, which is often the most reliable means of dealing with ganking for ships that are not meant to fight or not designed to fight. Now, to jump away, you can low wake to super cruise if you're not mass locked by your enemy, or you can high wake out of the system entirely, which works regardless of mass loss factors. However, one thing that does not work is trying to either super cruise or wake out when your frameshift drive has been disabled. And there is a particular effect in the game, which is called FSD Interrupt, or frameshift drive interrupt, that actively reboots your frameshift drive, and clearly while your frameshift drive is rebooting, you're not going anywhere. And as a result, a sitting duck and more accessible target for those who would like to blow you up. Now, to this day, FSD Interrupt as an effect was available in one of two ways. You could engineer it as an experimental effect on so-called dump fire missiles, as in missiles that you shoot and just fly in a straight line, or you could acquire it as part of a power play module, which is called Rocket Propelled Containment Missile, which is Yuri Grom's power play faction-specific module, which has this effect as an inherent effect. You can also put FSD Interrupt on experimental, and it will extend the effect a little bit, but not by a significant margin. So, regardless of whether you engineer it yourself or acquire a set of Groms, these missiles are dump fires. They fly in a straight line. They're pretty slow at 750 meters per second, which means that hitting anything with these is kind of hard. And especially if you're trying to hit a nimbler, faster ship, it's unlikely that you will be able to hit them. You have to be really at point blank and really up close to have a realistic shot at getting a shot in. Which is one of the reasons why, even though their effect is remarkable, these modules were not all that common. Another reason these modules were not that common, a more recent reason these modules were not that common, is the fact that for more advanced commanders, more endgame commanders, a new class of pre-engineered frameshift drive was made available. And these double pre-engineered V1 FSDs that come with the SCO effect as well are pre-engineered not only with increased range, but they also have the fast boot pre-engineering modification, which most of the time does absolutely nothing of use. However, it does have the significant benefit in this particular case and scenario of cutting down the time that you are affected by Groms or by FSD Interrupt effect more generally by a very significant margin, which in turn means that the FSD Interrupt effect, when used against ships equipped with these endgame drives, is really not all that useful. Now enter the latest community goal, where Frontier Developments has made the decision to grant a unique module that was just not available up to this day, and specifically a medium and large seeker missile rack, which is pre-engineered with high capacity, sturdy modification, and FSD Interrupt as an effect. Again, to this day, this is the first and possibly only ever module that will allow anyone to fire missiles that are seeking, as in they will actively chase and track their target, which most likely is you. And if they hit you, they will reboot your frameshift drive, in turn resulting in you probably getting blown up. Unless, again, you have one of the new SCO drives if that's the case, you might be able to get away. But those pre-engineered drives, as I mentioned already, are very materials expensive. They require a Titan drive component, among other materials, and as a result, it is unlikely that newer players will have them equipped, which is, again, unfortunate, as ganking is, as always, more stacked against newer players rather than experienced players. Another factor to be aware of, which I don't think is going to be of humongous consequence, but it's something that you should know considering these modules are coming into play, is the fact that unlike dumbfires, like Groms and like other missiles that to this day could be engineered with FSD Interrupt effect, which could care less about electronic countermeasures, the new Seeker missiles will be affected by ECM. ECM will result in them losing tracking and eventually swerving out of the way without hitting you, unless you're very, very, very unlucky. Whether this warrants kitting ECM on all traders and all vessels is a bit of a question mark. If you play in open and if you play in zones that are prone to having gankers in them and you want to be able to defend against these missiles, it might be something that you might consider. But for most players, I would assume that this is not something that they will actively consider kitting on their ships, especially if they have the pre-engineered FSDs with a faster boot effect in addition to the increased range. But either way, it's good to know that this exists. If you do kit an ECM, my strong recommendation would be to also map a hotkey so that your ECM doesn't require you fiddling with fire groups while you're actively getting shot at and trying to escape, which would not be healthy and result in you probably getting blown up regardless. But as I said, nevertheless, it is unlikely that we will see large-scale usage of electronic countermeasures going forward. What do you think of the balance of these new modules? Is it indeed after gift to gankers, or is it appropriate rebalancing after the introduction of double-engineered FSDs? We'd love to know your comments in the comments below. Glory to mankind. Commander Mechan, over and out.